He taught me that you can tell a person by where they spend their times. And I was looking at online all the information regarding our speaker. And first of all, I'd like to let you know that she was educated at Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio College of Education. But what's interesting is she chose to take a degree in special education. Characteristic, patient, and loving, and helpful. And then she volunteers in a number of organizations. And to name a few, it's the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Preschool for Sensory Impaired, to name others. That tells you that she's compassionate and caring. Then her political involvement is with District 6 Councilwoman from 1993 to 2001, and then again from 2010 to present. So that tells you that she's dedicated, committed, and a hard worker. Now, our speaker is married to Leonard S. Rich, and she has 2 children and 2 grandchildren. I introduce our speaker, Ms. Bess Rich.
That's sweet. That's very sweet.
You are very sweet. Thank you.
That's so sweet. Well, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me, and I really do appreciate this opportunity to address everybody. Mostly I want to save a lot of time for your questions and for your input. I find it very, very important to engage in the community. Of course, I'm focused of residents in the district, but whenever I have the opportunity to go to an eclectic crowd of people from all over the area, that certainly helps me grow even more. So I know that I asked Mary Ann Merchant, who I know is a wonderful active member of the League, what did I need to prepare for? And she said, oh, they're going to want to know about what's going on with what you read in the press about the lawsuit, perhaps, between the mayor's office and the council's office. And Mary Ann, you said map of Mobile was of interest, and there was a third or fourth thing. You mentioned a few things. The airport, the movement of the airport was another thing. And so I said, well, thank you for that heads up. And again, my goal here is not just to talk at you, but to talk with you and also take back your interests, concerns, and whatever is on your mind. As far as the lawsuit, I'll start out with that. I was most surprised to be served with the lawsuit, and mostly because it happened, some of us felt was the lack of communication. And again, you have a very busy administration and council people coming from all different angles. So I know it's difficult to keep those lines going, but it got to the point. And so we were working towards, coming together as a group. And the final straw really was a second filing that had to do with an ordinance that the council had passed by all 7 members. So that's really kind of stunning to me, because when 7 people can come together, it only requires 5 and we can pass it, but 7 means that everybody was on board. And we had worked hard because we needed information that we felt at budget time we had not been given. So it does behoove the council to come up with legislation, because we are the legislators. We do not operate our government, but we do legislate, to come up with a plan on how this information could make it up to the clerk's office. The clerk's office does work for the city council. And so that is the one office, and actually there's even some some nuances about this, that I don't know how you can have the person who is in charge of the department and also not all the other people under their wings not respond or take kind of directives or produce information that the council needs in order to be good communicators and to be good at what they do when they're working towards legislation. But anyway, we got a second component to further charge the county, where you mitigate instead of have the judge take it. And so that's where we are right now. So a lot of the things that I've been able to discuss with the lawyer that represent the council, very public. But you can read, I think, I'm not sure whether the mayor has the first charge where he sued the council, but he does have the second charge. And you can go to page, I think, and you can read where his lawyers are putting and moving the message forward through the courts. I don't think the court is any place for how you can and should communicate. That's my personal thing. I would say that on a good day, that's not privileged. And so anyway, that's about all that I really can talk about on that regard. The other thing is the map of Mobile. How many of you went to those first meetings where tons of people came out and we were looking at charts and making all kinds of initiatives on how we wanted our city to move forward? That went back to, I think, 2014 it started, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even late 2013. But we are now into more of the final stages of what our new zoning codes will look like. And they have extended the comment period. And I urge each of you to go to the mapofmobile.org. It's not an easy site to navigate because you're not able to put the old with the new, and you can put in your address and you can find out how it's zoned or a commercial area, what they're calling it. And then there's another page that deals with what will be allowed in that zone. And but it's not together. I was hoping that you could link and just pile it all together. And they said it's better than it was initially when they were testing it, but they are taking comments, I believe, till April 8th now, which extended that outside comment period till April 8th. There are some nuances on it that are concerning to me, and that is when you look at the commercial, what they've designated as commercial, they've tried to add lots of components of what would be allowed by right. And I have noticed, and I understand the staff is aware of this and feels it is flawed, when you look at what we historically call B1, that's your soft buffer business. And out in West Mobile, a lot of that is in people's backyards or side yards, because it's supposed to be the blend from the commercial. You put a B1 buffer because it's a 9 to 5, and you might assume that whoever is in the R1 or R2 or R3 is gone during those hours. But in the evening, those businesses are closed and not interfering with the quality of life on the R's, the residential classification. And I kept looking at that list, and I saw things like a used car lot, their yard, with the speakers and the lights, and they are saying that they're tweaking. But it's your opportunity, if you even want to make one general statement, I would hope, and it is actually listed as one of the main reasons we are doing our new codes, and that is to stabilize and enhance neighborhoods. So that should be a big litmus test in what our new zoning codes are made of. So if anything, if you'll just promote that, that would be something they would know had a great base. If you're on the other side of the aisle and in the development community, of course you want an open door to be able, I get that, but there's a great balance that has to exist. So our neighborhoods really need that protection if they're going to be stable and survive. And so that's something that I'm going to use as my litmus test, and I've always tried to use that. As a matter of fact, it was one of the reasons why I got into public office. As a matter of fact, someone asked me just recently, like right here, what got me involved, and that was because I was a neighborhood president.
Lazy boy.
I'm lazy boy. Which became a B1, by the way, which we said initially would be a really good thing to back into a neighborhood. So it just took 25 years to make that happen. And it happened because it made more sense than to have a commercial thing. But we did sweat when that got empty because they were sitting with a B2, and that could have been a nightclub, God knows what. And you have to have them growing, and you have to have them viable, and you have to be very careful about how you go about that. Managing traffic that goes through neighborhoods, managing safety issues. People are very portable, so they don't have to stay where they're not comfortable. And if you look at east of 65, we have a lot of areas abandoned, blighted, and a lot of the things that took place from those mistakes, and you don't repeat them. And so that's what I'm hoping this map of Mobile can help create all over the city, and not just for, you know, the district that I represent, but of course I'm like a mother hen with the district I represent. The other thing is the airport. And how many of you think that it should move out to Brooklyn? How many people live close to it now and don't want it to move out that way? Okay, all right. The current board is very much focused on moving the airport out to Brooklyn. They'll start in May with 2 airlines that will leave from Brooklyn. They're not everyday airlines that will fly every day out of Mobile. I think it's a couple of days a week. I think it's Frontier, and the other is Via. I think that's what I've heard. And so they have limited runs that they make, but people will be getting and catching them at Brooklyn, with the idea that the airport should sit in our city to service our city where 2 major interstates intersect. And on an intellectual level, I think that makes good sense for getting people to your airport and close to downtown where we want tourists to come and visitors to come. And we also lost a lot of Baldwin County to Pensacola because it's about the same amount of time to travel from Pensacola, and you would think, well, a Baldwin County person, if they could get right to the airport, they would utilize the one in Mobile as opposed to the one in Pensacola. The airport authority is selected by the mayor, but takes confirmation through the council. I'm correct about that one, right, that board? We've had some missteps lately. But that is something that your council person could be made aware of, you know, what is this person's initiative. But I do know that I believe most of the business community supports going on to Brooklyn. I've had some people say, well, now that we have Airbus, would a regional airport, or even someday, should we grow exponentially an international airport, would that limit you know, the exposure of something as wonderful as having Airbus manufacture right here in our city, because of space that they might need being taken up by what then becomes our regional or international airport. And those are good questions to ask, but again, I do think you're gonna see it start in May for sure, because they've got the space and they're reinventing it as a terminal. So I guess maybe you can watch that. You've seen now the planes that leave off of Brooklyn. Has that gotten so much greater since Airbus is there? It has. I see some. Yeah, okay. And that's much more than in the past. And it's more than in the past. I know they test their airplanes and they leave from there. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of industry that's landing planes there. And again, you have to remember that resource which in most cities might not have stayed dormant as long as it did, being that it was the military, and then the city didn't adopt it as its regional airport, went out west with the regional airport, and then it didn't have the life that it has now, but it can land a 47. I mean, it landed the shuttle, space shuttle. Do you remember when that came to town? I mean, it's a fascinating resource for our city. It's amazing. Yes?
Is there any possibility that we could keep and have both airports, have two airports? Keep the
You know,
one
I haven't heard that dialogue. The council did have an opportunity to meet with their new, they call him president of the airport authority, Chris Curry is his name, who is what was the director in the past. Now I believe his title is president of the Mobile Airport Authority. And we didn't really talk about what was the future to go on with what was Batesfield or a regional airport, and whether that would be a dual, system for the city of Mobile for people to utilize. I'm really not sure of that.
Okay, thank you.
We have a friend who's a Delta pilot, and he says Delta pilots do not want to land at Brooklyn. It said there's fog coming up off the river, and it said that'll make flights canceled or delayed and all the rest of it. Said they are much happier on base.
And right now, Delta's our boss, the airport. Because usually they're the big boy in town.
Delta
Yep.
in America.
Yeah.
There's some unity.
Right, but Delta's really the big boy on the block, so I don't know how much influence they would have, on making sure that it didn't happen, so I wouldn't know about those dynamics, but I hadn't heard that.
What has Airbus, how they commented on the airport moving in?
Yeah, they do not object. I asked that question, actually. The temporary or the new, what will become the terminal was something that was theirs, actually. They rent everything from the airport authority. The airport authority is their landlord, so to speak, but they gave up space. And so they embrace the idea, obviously, at least this aspect of it. So, but I keep your eye on that one.
And here's another one. The South Alabama Foundation just recently sold what used to be the golf course and the cafeteria and all that. other
Right, and all
nice
those,
stuff
the
to
barracks.
a
or whatever.
developer.
Yes. 45 acres out of
And
there.
how would a developer like building nice homes right next to an airport?
I don't know what they have planned, because I wasn't at the table, but apparently it's somebody who's got some master plan that they were able to.
They're gonna save the wetlands,
Yeah.
supposedly.
Right,
We've saved the
They
wetlands before.
they didn't sell the wetlands, is what it amounted to.
And we've tried to save wetlands before. You know how that's gone.
When they start the passenger service in May, will they just add more TSA at Brooklyn, or will they be pulling from regional,
I don't know.
making lines longer?
Yeah, that's an interesting, I don't know. I would imagine they would have to get different staff, but I don't know. I could ask that question, that's an excellent question. Right, yeah, what's the assigned? But I don't know if it has to do with takeoffs, how that works, what the formula is. Good question, though, that's an excellent question. Yes, hey Betty.
Thank you, Mrs. Rich, for your,
Oh, that's not Betty.
Says,
for your service. And this is
Darylyn.
a question, this is just a comment and a concern.
Sure.
I am concerned that the city of Mobile shoulders the majority of the weight when it comes to giving incentives for companies to come to Mobile. But in my belief, Mobile has not prospered with these businesses coming. Baldwin County has, and the county has. So in the future, I guess we need to figure out how we can ensure that people actually move into the city of Mobile.
Yes. That's been
Or
big
Baldwin
dialogue.
County puts in a share, and then we're not left holding the bag, and
Yes.
our population dwindles
Right.
at the expense of our.
I I don't disagree. That's been a big dialogue with the council whenever we meet with the chamber, because the chamber is the tool that makes the recommendations to the government on what industries and what the components will be in order to come together with incentives, be it county, state, or city. And that's been huge dialogue with the council back and forth. And there is no way to tie an incentive to the best language you can get is best case effort. And all of that has been written in of recent, that residents in Mobile County, if the county's also participating, we're good with that as city members of the coast, the group that's bringing the funds together. But you are prohibited, and I think it's some kind of federal violation where you make it as though that money is tied to only people, so they have to say they'll make their best case effort to get those employees from this particular area.
My second point is, replace the council, I guess the mayor makes the suggestion, the council believes quite a few people in key positions live in Baldwin County.
Yes.
That is a real concern.
Yes.
Yeah,
If
that's
you
been.
don't live in this city, you don't have a vested interest as a people.
I would tend to agree with you with some positions. That would be extremely important, and that's been pointed out. A lot of the appointments that the mayor has made do not require council approval. And so it's actually part of the lawsuit because of the questions during the budget cycle that the council had about the number of employees that are no longer work strictly for the personnel board, but work under his signature. And we tried to get an ordinance that would give the council an understanding of what those jobs were, who was sitting in them, what their responsibilities were, what their salaries were, and we're now in court. So, and it's really started with the budget cycle, actually. Yes?
Could you go back to the map of Mobile and talk a little bit about the by right cost, what it is, when is it appropriate? It doesn't sound like a citizen friendly.
Would you elaborate, what do you mean by, I haven't heard that expressed, what do you
Isn't
mean?
that what you said was in the map of Mobile, that by right?
Oh,
was
by what was allowed by right, I'm sorry, misunderstood. Yes, right now, if you look at our zoning book, it goes on for pages, and it will say, car dealership, or optometry, or, every aspect of any kind of business is listed. And then it's given a chart that says it's allowed by right in B1, it's allowed by right in B2, it's not allowed in R1 at all. It's like all these different things. What they're trying to do is lump things together that automatically calls an area a certain type of plaza, or it'll say suburban commercial, and then it has all these things that can fall into it. Whereas, like I said, we have B1 commercial, but that's gone away, and it's like you wouldn't want a used car lot or a gas station in what is B1 today, because the whole idea is that it had a reason, it had a softer type of commercial profile. So they are going back now, but it's called a unified code. You'll hear that word, and that is to take areas and unify all these things under it that can go in by right with that designation. And
that means the citizens don't have any say.
well, once it gets zoned in that classification or put into that classification, the owner would have the direct right to do what is on that list. And that's why you've got to compare what is this called now and what rights are given to that property owner. And they're getting pushback from people who own commercial property. I get that, because maybe they looked at the list and said that's not enough. and so it's a balancing act right now. But I don't think you can take a certain area and just lump it all together and say that it's going to work. They do have a new aspect of the code, which I love, and that is if somebody does want to change the zoning, they have to initiate by working with surrounding property owners with a meeting even prior to that public hearing. And I love that idea. I try to encourage those kind of meetings so that if there is mitigation that you can do by having something that most people would say, I don't want this, but if you do this, this, and this, it works. So I like that aspect of it. And then they talk about some of the exterior having more criteria by virtue of the development. Unfortunately for West Mobile, that doesn't get into play until someone does more than 50% of renovations. And by the time you split up a lot of the shopping plazas out west, they're like sections are owned by different people. So if they come in and they're like the Mobile Infirmary in the plaza that's on Hillcrest and Airport, I was so excited when I saw the old building kind of go on its head. And I thought they're going to make that parking lot so nice. But because they really didn't change the footprint, no real, we got little Christmas trees. I mean, it's lovely. And you know, I get that it's a service that Mobile Infirmary is providing, but just think how nice that would have been if it got a little softer and less asphalt. You know, things that people want nearby their homes. And but as soon as I said, oh, wait a minute, you got to get out there. That's not going right. They said, Bess. They didn't change the footprint. Well, do you see any of those things changing footprints to really get what we want to see changed and made better? I don't. Because I think there's too much ownership within those strips, and, you know, just pick them off one at a time to change them out.
Kind of to what Joan said about the tax abatements. With what you just said, would it be possible that when we are giving, you know, tax abatement into perpetuity for a company to come here, could we not stipulate the parking lot, the texture, the landscape, and all of those other ingredient elements to make it environmentally more positive?
Yeah,
It would seem.
yeah, we have a code now that talks about any parking lot that takes more than 200 cars. The developer has an option to do, a better surfacing that's more environmentally friendly, but it's not a requirement.
But I'm thinking, I would like it to be universal, but I'm speaking only to people who are getting tax.
Oh, I see, like an Airbus or
a Costco, or, you know,
yeah,
it's a long list.
yeah. That's a good thought. I mean, it could be tied to that as far as what resources, because what happened with Costco, that whole development, they put in the streets. We give a quarter percent of every sale will go in forever, because the excuse was they created the streets and normally the city creates streets. But that's really not true, because when you do a development on a PUD, usually it is the developer that does that. But those were considered city streets, not just part of the PUD. And so we gave that, I'm not supposed to use this word as a politician, a kickback, but we do. I think it might even be a penny at every sale, and I think the county's at a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big.
And also that other
It's big.
shopping center out there at Schillinger's. And
We
Airport.
rejected adding a penny to the consumer, and there are certain things that have to be done in order to get the incentive, and that is new business, not repeat businesses, and I understand that one's working and still turning over money to the city of Mobile at the same time. The Costco, that whole profile, not so much apparently. And you can check with the city, because they're supposed to tell you every year exactly how much went out the door and how much came in.
Another comment I'd like to just throw out, having watched you over a long period of time and finding you to be probably pilot, his pretty close to home, we went through a long, pretty ugly slog about the pipeline and above ground tank storage.
Yes.
And we lost, the environmental community, and the city of Mobile, we lost. And I think the average citizen, if you're not involved with the environmental community,
Yeah.
people have no idea how many big storage tanks are right on the river, right downtown, much closer to us than Deer Park is to Houston.
Yes, they're 30 miles away, aren't they, from
Yeah.
Houston, it's, or Dallas, wherever their closest
Yeah,
city
but
is.
they're right next to neighborhoods, cause I used to live in it.
Oh, wow,
So it's surrounded by neighborhoods.
wow.
So.
Well, they have no
It's safe.
zoning,
It's all safe.
they have no zoning
Not
in
hurting
Texas.
anybody but the animals. It's okay.
Well, that's what they told us, don't worry.
Don't
And
worry.
the questions
You're
were
fine.
raised, would
And
the,
people are dropping off with cancer left and right.
would the first responders even know if there were a spill or
Mhm.
a giant
Right,
flame,
mhm.
that has spread? They've got it under control, but it's not put out as of this morning. Would they even know what's in the tanks? Because we went through that, remember that issue where it
Yes.
was like, oops, Daisy, we didn't realize that was whatever it was.
Yeah, that put the city on notice, but
Yeah.
it didn't get very far.
I'm gonna contact the Member Council and the mayor just to say, I hope you're communicating with Deer Park and Houston to see what they are doing to contain and protect the citizens, because that could be us.
Have you reviewed the industrial corridor, changes or locations on the map of Mobile to weigh in on that?
I
Is
have
it,
not done that.
you probably need to, because this is your time to do it. This is the time, because of the adoption of the new codes. It's been since 1962, I think, since the city adopted zoning codes. And, so that's a really long time to go without any changes, and these will be the first changes if we, can get them out the door.
It was so discouraging, the battle with the above ground tank storage, open air cold storage.
Right.
The pipeline to Pascagoula. We lost.
In federal court or
Well,
local?
with the council planning
Yeah,
commission.
well, I know that part.
Okay.
But didn't it go, something went to court?
It went to court and it was a 4-day hearing, and within 15 minutes at the last day, it's a done deal.
Was it a federal court ruling?
I'm not sure, I don't think so. The judge, within 15 minutes, had his decision, it was done, it started, it was a done deal, without a doubt. And, they ruled against us, that was on the pipeline.
Yeah, that's what happened, and it's not similar, but it's a zoning issue, with the property at, airport and university, where you saw all the trees go on their heads if you drive around there. My phone rang, oh boy. And that was an area that was a very established neighborhood, and if you look from, it's dogwood all the way down to azalea, other than a few little things near azalea, it's all residential. And every council, had said no to zoning it commercial, even though it sat on a commercial corridor. We kept saying, look inward, don't look out. It's all treed, it can stay residential, maybe patio homes, maybe an R2 or R3, maybe more density, but don't change the zoning. And the city council hung tough. I wanna say, over the course of the ask from developers, 5 or 6 times at least, said no. And finally, this last one went to court, and I heard also very quickly, the judge said, oh, look at that, there's 3 corners, and they made it LB2, and we have the CBS. So that's.
Like we need another.
Well, it's not even the need, it was you took a whole area, and so now you can anticipate down airport,
Right.
what will happen to all those homes that for years have front and still stayed residential, because they lost that anchor at the top, and so you'll look for all that.
Yes, you're correct about the code. It's very, I've waited.
Try to get on the website. I know.
Yes, it's hard.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think I read is in an area that's zoned R1,
that is a platted subdivision, it looks like to me that now, in that by right clause, you can now put in, next door you can have patio homes, or somebody can put in a group home, even if your subdivision code or the platted.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Covenants. This is the lady you want to talk to about covenants. Are supposed to protect because they are civil in nature, and the city is not supposed to get in the middle of covenants. They're a whole different thing. They supersede zoning if the building has covenants or the subdivision. I looked at the residential, and the group home is by federal law already allowed in every single residential profile. Okay, so that's, because you cannot discriminate, so that's there. Now, the outside kitchens or things, I think they're trying to think that that's, just what people are doing in their homes, and rather than have to get a variance or whatever, or what they're calling a mother-in-law suite, a lot of people want to be able to house a family member, but not in the same structure if their property's big enough. I just don't know what they're saying is a big enough lot to contain that, how close it can be to the neighbor, and that's what I'm trying to pull together, because you cannot see you can, but you have to go like to a whole nother page to find out what exactly is the restrictions within doing that, by making that a right, because maybe if the neighborhood lots are kind of small, just saying you can get another structure, how is that going to interfere with the neighbor to the left or to the right? So those are good questions. But like I said, there are some good components, mostly the sitting down when a change is, wanted by a landowner. I like that. I like some idea that there could be a structure that has to look a certain way instead of, just be thrown up in a temporary thing, but, fits the criteria. The landscaping ordinance part, I think, is going up from a minimum of 12% of landscaping to, I've heard anything from 18 to 20%. I don't think it's 20%. Where they're and it has to be like a raw piece of property almost. Again, just redeveloping something doesn't trigger. And I don't know how you write that into a code, but to me that's lacking. And I don't know how that could be fixed. Again, because of what I watched with the infirmary's reinvention of the old Hudsons. Yes?
Okay, I hope this is my final comment. But, as you know, the population of the city of Mobile is declining. And with the police jurisdiction changing, that gives us an opportunity, I think, to let the city grow. If we don't do that and they form another city, then that opportunity will close for us. So I'd like to know how you feel about
Yes,
expanding.
Yes, I've been approached by residents of neighborhoods that sit directly across from the city of Mobile. And there is a rule that if 100% of the landowners petition, they can come in. And you can look for a neighborhood that is going to do it in that manner, and I understand they've already gotten everybody to ask to come in. I think it's a great sign for Mobile that they want to join us. That is 47 lots, and everybody wants to petition in to become part of the city. I hope my colleagues like that idea. I'll certainly be a real proponent of it. Then there's another neighborhood. These are all off. It's called Cody, but then it becomes Solly, if you're familiar. So, you're on the western edge of the city. And then this neighborhood with the 47, it actually sits on Solly. And then there's another neighborhood that has 107 homes. And I've been approached by that president, and he says he's working on that. That area that is now feels under stress by losing services, by us pushing back our jurisdiction, which, believe it or not, I favored, because the residents that I represent were probably the hardest hit by that growth ring that people who didn't pay their full freight, so to speak, were getting the services, police and fire. And then residents in the city limits paying the full rate, full property tax for the rate, and for shopping in the area, they were getting very not such good response times. So because we didn't increase, the number of personnel or the resources. We have 2 fire stations actually that sit in the district, but they're probably 2 of the busiest profiles because of that western growth. There is a group in this bigger corridor, and I forget what the number of homes it represents, but they are, the last statistics I was given, they had a big meeting, and 68% of the people favored coming into the city. And I think that's wonderful. I think there might be some misnomer on what makes up the demographics of West Mobile. I think my colleagues will be very surprised that it's not just lily white, so to speak.
No.
It's so eclectic, and I attribute that to the university and to the businesses out there, the professionals that have landed in those neighborhoods. And so I'm hoping that they want to embrace, I think your message would facilitate Mobile growing if they have to embrace it, because groups that can come in one at a time through petition is a lot different, because the council still has to accept them into the city limits. But a bigger election also requires the city council calling the election. And I truly hope they want to do this, because it's really the only way we can grow. So thank you for that.
Are we going to see more of the communities along the Solly corridor area asked to be part of the city limits and expand sort of in that southwestern area as they expand Nevius over to Solly? That was part of what was just approved as pay-as-you-go.
Yes. A lot of that is...
Okay, back up to the microphone. There you go.
A lot of it is already in the city limits. Mm-hmm. That whole Nevis corridor is already in.
Right, but when it gets expanded.
Yes, and those neighborhoods would all be part of it, unless they're small and everyone agrees. I mean, think about that. There's going to be an outlier in most neighborhoods that says, no, I don't want any part of the city. It's a little more taxes. Don't bother me. I don't like their codes or whatever. But an election, I think, would be successful. But it will take my colleagues calling that election. And it will also take an administration saying they can absorb the people and not have it be a tipping balance that is too costly for the city to take in all these residents without having enough resources for the services. Now, we took in 2009, I wasn't on council, they took in that whole corridor of Schillingers down to almost Cottage Hill. And so that was a good grab. All those people shopping there are already paying the same taxes as though they're in the city limits. And their property taxes would go up a little bit than what they pay for the county. But that doesn't click in for, I think, 10 years, because there's some kind of state code that allows them not to have to pay their property tax in those residents. They look a lot like the city of Mobile for the most part. Their neighborhoods, they're living close to each other. People in rural areas usually don't want much to do with government codes, but when you live next to a neighbor, you really appreciate that neighbor cannot, put the toilet bowl in the front yard. We're going to come and cite you. So, it has its benefits, but the vantage point is this is the right thing to do, and this is the opportunity before they go into their own, or better yet, Sims takes them on. But we kind of prevented that to some degree because of what we took in on Schillingers, along Schillingers to the city limits, but it wouldn't behoove us to have another city on our borders.
I was going to say, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I was going to say, I've got a friend that lives right at Schillingers and Cottage Hill, right behind the shopping center right there. And it's county. And she has a neighbor that parks everything in the yard, pigs running free. And, you know, she can't get any
They have no
help.
zoning.
That's
They
right.
have no zoning
Yeah.
up there.
It's terrible.
Yeah, we can
So,
be very helpful.
Yeah.
And I do hope, I really do. I mean, because when that gentleman called me about coming in, I said, where do I sign, you know? I mean, it can only be good in my opinion. I don't see a downside. Although I understand the economics of taking in people that you feel like you can't. So it might have to be done in stages to do it.
Sort of back to Midtown issue for a moment. Can you comment in any way on Ladd Stadium? And I know the budget appropriation, I didn't know if that was linked in with the lawsuit or not.
It is, because the council felt very emphatic that this community did not want to see Ladd downsized or lost in the scheme of things. And so we sent a propped up budget to get them two aspects within the budget. We couldn't, you know, the board is actually a creature of the council. So we feel like we have very good rapport with the board. And it was to give money to do a walking path, which people in that area want to have that resource, and who doesn't in most city parks or recreation areas. And the other was, there was a engineering study that had been performed back in 2016 that basically made it sound like the stadium was ready for collapsure. And that board felt that wasn't the case. They did use their own resources to hire a whole different firm and got a whole different report. But they also then got a list of priorities that need repaired. And so we actually looked at giving them an increase over what the mayor had put into the budget, and that was an additional $750,000. And that's not moved over to them. And so, but it became part of the lawsuit.
I'm wondering about another subject. That's the paving of the roads in Mobile. As I look around, especially from about Spring Hill to Midtown to downtown, the roads in some of the most beautiful neighborhoods and some of the most historic areas also are just totally deteriorated. And I'm perplexed. Maybe I should know this, but I haven't followed it. Why do we not have the money? Do we just not have the
Every council district, in the extra penny, the council allocated the use of that penny, and every district got $3 million out of the 21. It brings in anywhere from 28, depending on the economy, to about 32 million each penny that we have that you trade. And council members are real into paving and giving those resources back to the community. I know my office sent out a letter, or it was a postcard, and they had to mail it back, and I got tons of them back. I was so proud of that. Asking if every year there's $3 million, what you want it spent on, and it was sidewalks, resurfacing, and if you live next to something that was not draining right, you wanted the drainage fixed if it was a city responsibility. Those were the three things, and then they said fix Medal of Honor Park for the district that I represent, and make that a better park facility for as a resource. There is a gasoline tax. You know, you heard about that. That just upticked, and there'll be more money coming into the coffers that is earmarked for resurfacing or rehabilitation of roads. You have the county pay-go program, which district representatives try to work with their county commissioner to hit the bigger streets. Like for my office, it would be Cottage Hill, Hillcrest, Knollwood, to use those resources for that. I try to use money for neighborhood resurfacing, because to me it's like painting your home. When your neighborhood's streets look all torn up, it's, you know, but then all of a sudden you get a nice thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to fix my house up too. This looks good, you know, to keep those streets. They get a lot of traffic, a lot of the neighborhoods, and so it's a balancing act, but I can't disagree with you that we can't do it fast enough. At one time, the city of Mobile, okay, for the whole year, I'm talking everywhere, no, because they started taking the pennies that were allocated for capital and moving them over to operate. Yeah.
That's a whole new,
Yeah.
that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and there was some pushback. I'm not making them concrete, but now I think people are realizing they have to go the other product. Yes?
On the gas tax, does it isn't just highways and more public roads?
No, the state gets a great portion of that from our gasoline tax, but every county and every municipality got a portion.
Oh.
Yes, yes. I think it's 4 million for the city of Mobile. I could be wrong. Yeah, no, we put in $1 million from Sage to McGregor. I don't think it's working yet, or areas. I mean, $1 million. It was 500 one cycle, 500 the next, and this was out of District 5's capital, CIP, out of his $3 million. I'm waiting for those lights because the next section is supposed to be, I believe our traffic engineering department is aware of it. We just let go a big contract. What was that from? It was on government to the Bankhead Tunnel, but I forget on government where it started.
Something that's annoying because then they have to respond,
Yeah.
and then we are the squeaky wheels that get the response.
Yeah. Out of district money, there's $250,000 that I was told would get Christopher Estates, if you know where the Publix is there, and the Cottage Hill lights synchronized. Move you a little faster. So.
Speaking about David, the City of Mobile Animal Shelter was built in 1950. And whether you like animals or hate animals, you would benefit by having a stronger animal control because it's going to take care of the animals that need help and keep them from, just wandering the streets and make everybody's life a little better. But that shelter is so outdated, there's not room for the animals.
I know, down on Gale Street, and it's hard to get to.
Well, true.
And the other thing is that you're supposed to have a license on all your pets. You know this, don't you? I even know it. Good for you. But you have to go down to get it. They don't do it by mail. They do it by mail now? Well, that's a good thing. Okay, they'll send it, you give in your certificate. Why can't you do that at your vet's office like some other cities?
Yeah.
You go in, you get your rabies shot, he certifies it. I mean, why aren't they out at the dog park with a computer taking people's names and, working with them out there?
It doesn't matter. If you don't have a license for your pet, they can't take them to shelter.
Right, yeah.
That house, maybe 100.
Yeah, I know, it's a catch-22, I don't disagree.
Right, so
Yeah.
we just need
Right.
them in the shelter, but nobody ever addresses that.
Yeah, it's not a high priority, you're correct, I don't disagree. There are, I think the Friends built that what they call a cat house.
Right, volunteers
Yeah.
have raised money to
Right.
add more
Right,
places to house
Right.
them.
and there are grants and foundations that support this nationwide.
But what about the city and all the money
Yeah.
that they get from these taxes? From
Right.
coming in?
Well, that would be
Some of it allocated.
When we went into that 3 million per district, we also isolated certain entities that were not considered things that the city council would allocate towards, like the shelters or the fire stations. These are citywide projects because there's still capital money that is allocated for those. And I think what your group has to do is lobby the city of Mobile, meaning the administration, to say, could you bump this up on your list of priorities? And yeah, take a number, unfortunately.
Bess, you have one more question?
Sure, yeah.
I was just wondering, has the garbage disagreement been settled, or is it still?
It's part of the court case.
Oh, gosh.
Because the council gave a raise, and the mayor has an initiative of, I guess it's more like an incentive plan for employees. I'm sorry, for incentive plan for employees. And so that's, the budget is in question as far as who authorizes the directives. And this administration believes that it should not come from the council, and that would be a first, actually.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking our speaker today. We very much appreciate your being available to us and answering our questions. As you can see, there's a lot of interest and a lot of energy in the room, so thank you very much.
And you all keep it up. Thank you.